Okay, so this is one of the first videos to demonstrate some of the functionality within Data Jedi. Uh, as a backdrop to why does this plugin exist, how did it start to come about, it really was to try to reduce the workload units and therefore improve performance around searches. Most of Bubble apps' workload unit consumption comes in the form of fetching data, and as a side note to that, also in the filtering of that data. So what happened for me personally was when the pricing model of workload units was announced some 24 months ago now, my initial reaction to the pricing around how we get charged for every character returned and every object returned, it led me to immediately understand the consequences there, that we would likely have very, very high costs for particular types of applications that rely heavily on data fetches. These are applications that are like listing sites, directories, and maybe even e-commerce. So what I had requested of Bubble in the form of giving us a feature that allows us to isolate which fields from our data type in the Bubble database do we actually want returned, so that we could, in a way, reduce our workload units by requesting only fields that we need. Because very often when we are searching and demonstrating to a user the results in the form of visible data, we don't necessarily in those searches show every single field of data that we have on the data thing. Examples there would be if you were searching for products. You might have lots of information around it that's not displayed in the initial list, where you show like the product picture, the name, and maybe the price. So in that sort of instance, you only really need around 3 fields. The legacy way of improving search performance was to have a separate data type that some claim to be a sort of satellite data type, which basically was a mirror image of your main data type, but slimmed down in the number of fields that it has. And that's fine for the way that things were before workload units, but in today's workload unit age, we need a new approach. We need a better approach, because if you were to maintain that legacy approach of creating a satellite data type, you then have workload unit costs associated with the maintenance and the creation of those data, because now you have 2 different data types. And so that is one reason why the legacy approach is not really a way to reduce workload units overall. The other problem with that approach too is it doesn't address some specific issues with the way in which we get charged for every single character returned. I'll be demonstrating that later in this video, where we look at a network tab and compare what it is that Bubble sends in your normal sort of legacy approach and what it is that we're getting with the Data Jedi approach. And what that is that Bubble actually prefixes lots of characters onto every single data field, and that adds into the costs. Additionally, what Data Jedi and the approach here that's going to be exemplified does is it actually allows you to return less objects. And so we'll get into that in this video. It's very exciting stuff. But just as a kind of quick introduction to how do you get started here, you can definitely use ChatGPT or any other LLM that you might want to use to help you with getting your data structure started. And so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to jump into ChatGPT, their base model here. I'm going to give it a simple prompt. In the future, near-term future, I'll be expanding my content and helpful guidance around these types of things, especially when it comes to like nested data objects and understanding differences between different JSON structures, and how they impact your ability to use them within Bubble and the dynamic expressions. But right now, we're just going to focus on a basic data structure, no nested values or anything. It will just be for contacts, for a simple kind of contact management. So I'm just going to give the prompt to ChatGPT. So as you can see, I did ask it for some specific fields. Now the reason for these are, one, the ID. When we go to save these things into our bubble database, we need them to have some kind of a unique identifier. So the Data Jedi plugin within the actions, or rather within an element called Data Jedi and also actions of like convert, we are automatically generating an ID that is pretty much exactly what Bubble generates as a unique ID. What that means is it's a 32 character string that is utilizing the current date and time as part of its formatting. And so when we are converting different objects that do not have an ID, that can automatically be generated. There's also a function in the plugin during the conversion that you can checkbox whether or not you want an ID created or not. Now, the created date, the modified date, these things are helpful to be kept track of. The plugin does have some features where these things do get automatically created, mostly right now within a server-side action where we're able to compare lists to be able to generate 4 different lists of like what's new, what's unchanged, what's created, what's been modified. Now the modified by, what this is just an example of how it is that this particular approach to structuring data and manipulating, modifying basically all your CRUD operations that you might perform within Bubble can be expanded upon and provide us with more useful data, especially metadata like the modified by. So we could see which user last modified it. Because Bubble didn't go that far with their own data structure, they left it just at created by. But there's a very strong case to be made for why we should also maybe track the modified by. Now, I didn't try to prompt ChatGPT to give me these in any kind of specific format. You can see the way they did it though with the snake case for your field values or your key names. That's important. You do want that structure. And then the important kind of formatting that I gave it was the ISO value with the Z value. You do want that. That's going to be very helpful within your Bubble application. So once you get something that you're satisfied with, and for me right now in these demonstration purposes, I'm satisfied with this. So I'm going to go ahead and copy it. I'm going to come into my application now, not within the Data Jedi plugin area, but I am in the plugins tab. I need the API connector. Now, if you're not familiar with plugins and such inside of Bubble, to be able to install a new plugin, you would click onto the Add Plugins button. The plugin marketplace will open up. If you want to find the API connector, usually it is the first one you would see because normally we are pre-filtering by usage and it is the most used plugin within Bubble. You would not see Data Jedi at the top. This is there because I have it installed on this application in a private manner. So if you are looking for the Data Jedi plugin, you could just type in Jedi. It's going to be the only one that will show up. And then if you are looking for the API connector, if it's not there in front of you already, just type in API. It should be the first one that shows up. Then you just click on the button Install. I've already installed it, so I don't need to press it. Otherwise, that would uninstall. So within this, you would add another API. And I would suggest naming it in a way that you understand it. So for me, I'm just going to write it as my data structures. And now coming down to here, you need to click expand. You can click into the name and categorize it in a name. I'm going to type it as contact because that's what it is as a data type or like as an object type. So now I'm just going to click on manually enter API response. I'm going to click into here and I'm going to click paste. So once I've pasted this in, now this is in here and the blue button is blue, indicating it is a properly formatted JSON and so therefore it could be saved. If you are providing malformed JSON, then the blue button will be sort of grayed out in the way. So in terms of getting this in here, it does need to be properly formatted JSON. Now, once I press on save, this is going to open up the initialization area. And within this initialization area, we can actually go ahead and tell Bubble what types of values these are. So my modified by is supposed to be a user, but Bubble doesn't expose that in here. And so therefore, we'll just leave it as text as like a string. We'll end up saving the unique ID of the user because that's essentially what Bubble does anyway. Modified date, created date, I'll be changing these to the date. Okay, now one value in here as a sort of key that I would like to have is not already added by ChatGPT, so I'm just going to go ahead and automatically update that myself. So I'm just going to go ahead and paste into here again. Now I'm going to add in, so I'm just going to click into after this comma, I'm going to hit return. I'm going to then just kind of get spaced appropriately just because of my incessant need to see things in a certain way. And here I'm going to label this as gender, and I'm going to give it a label as male. And when I click on save, now I am again prompted here to be able to distinguish what type of data it is. Now, if you like working with option sets, you can actually map it to be an option. It will work. And so here, I'm just going to set these up and go ahead and say date and date. And now this is exactly how I need it. I'm going to go ahead and click on save. And so now in my application, I do have a new data type that could be saved into my Bubble database. So right now I'm going to go ahead and create a data type that we could be using to essentially save our contacts. So I'm going to go ahead and say contact, and I'm going to press create. Now, at this stage, there's so much stuff you can do to utilize Data Jedi and the power it brings with everything it's able to do, especially around this idea here of reducing the workload units, increasing the performance around your searches. What I'm saying is you can save this like object as a single object, as a field, or as a list of objects as a field. And when it comes to saving large lists of objects in Bubble, with this approach, the same generalized concepts around fields as lists in Bubble still remain true, which means they can't be beyond 10,000 items. And when you're getting into larger sets of them, you may experience some sort of slowdown. So it's important to understand here that you can segment them in various ways, and you can also just save them as a single field, just as you would like a normal contact in the normal sort of legacy approach with building inside of Bubble's database, where you just add those fields separately. So in this, I will demonstrate what is an approach that I like to take for data types that don't change very, very often, even though the Data Jedi plugin has every single function and feature you might need to be able to manipulate this type of data just as often as you would any other type of data inside of Bubble. It's just that when it comes to them not being changed that often means, yeah, you can kind of get away with adding more objects to the list field. And the other thing too is with a set of contacts, like I would anticipate personally that they would be searched for relatively often as people are within the sort of application that I have in mind here that would be utilizing the contact data type. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to write this out as contact list. Now in my field type, I do have this other data type down here, plugins, contact, okay? Now, one thing here is we see contact just, it's the same way. It's confusing to me. So what I will do is I'll update this and I'll say contact DB just to have a distinguisher. So now when I come back into here, I'm gonna go ahead and say contact list. And when I see that here, data types contact DB, that's clearly not the one I'm looking for, because the one I'm looking for is underneath here, plugin types. When I click on contact, now I can say list, and I create it. So now you can see here, list of contacts, it's the contact list. This is the data type that you have just initialized through this, okay? So I'm going to pause this video now, and I'm going to get set up for the next step.